Mark Meadows isn't going anywhere, and neither is his criminal case down in Georgia and Fulton County led by Fani Willis, because Mark Meadows couldn't find 4 MAGA right-wing Supreme Court justices to find that his prosecution in Georgia was a problem or that they wanted to see his sorry face in federal court. His appeal has been denied. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Thank you to the 30,000 people that joined us since the election. We can't do it without you. Now, I can't express this more. Now is the time to help us build this durable pro-democracy channel at the intersection of law and politics. Now let's return to Mark Meadows, because I guess we have to. Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff, argued that he can't be prosecuted for election interference and the conspiracy around it from 2020 in Georgia because he was a federal officer at the time. That's not what the 11th Circuit said after the lower court federal judge, Judge Jones, in the Northern District of Georgia, ruled that Mark Meadows, after hearing testimony from Mark Meadows, couldn't possibly have operating as a federal officer with a federal defense at the time he committed these crimes or alleged crimes. It went up to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, that's where we thought the Supreme Court might find this interesting, because for the first time in 200 years, the 11th Circuit or any federal court ruled that in order to use the federal removal statute to take your state prosecution over to a federal judge to try to get some sort of relief on your way to the Supreme Court, that it's the first time ever a federal court ever ruled a former federal officer can't use that provision. Is it entitled to seek removal? It makes perfect sense. The reason for federal removal as a doctrine is to allow a current federal officer who's got a job to do to avoid having like a local prosecutor go after them and not have a place of safety like a federal judge to go to try to stop the prosecution. Sort of makes sense. Interferes with the operation of the federal government. It's federalism versus states' rights. I understand it, but I never understood why a former federal officer is able to do it. They're not being interfered with. The federal government's not being interfered with. There's no issues of federalism. And that's what Judge William Pryor, the chief judge of the 11th Circuit, said too. Like, I don't get why any former federal, you're former White House chief of staff at best, you don't get this entitlement. And even if you did, you don't qualify, because to qualify for federal removal entitlement, you have to show that whatever you're being charged with was within the scope of your duties, like the color of your office, and that you have a unique federal defense. Well, he didn't have those either. But I thought, well, maybe the first time in 200 years, maybe the Supreme Court will want to weigh in on that point. No, I was wrong. The Supreme Court a week after the election was like, yeah, we're not taking any more cases from the co-conspirators of Donald Trump. Those that followed Donald Trump into the heart of darkness and into the abyss, who don't have his magical superpowers because he was the former president or now the future president. Yeah, you don't get to do what he does. And that's always been the problem. The co-conspirators are always like, me too, supremacy clause, separation of powers, immunity. He's got it. Why don't I have it? Because you're not the president. You're not the president then. You're not the president now. You'll never be the president. So Rudy Giuliani, Jeff Clark, the former acting attorney general, former White House counsel, former special advisor to the president, sit down. You're not going anywhere. Now, the Georgia prosecution may go somewhere, because it's going to be up eventually to the Georgia Supreme Court about whether Fani Willis, because she's the Fulton County DA and she had a relationship or dated, went out to dinner a couple of times with somebody in her office, that impacts the integrity of the prosecution. I've never seen that argument, but the Georgia Supreme Court hasn't had a chance to rule on it yet. And there's a few counts of the indictment that are on life support because of what the trial judge did. But the heart of the prosecution against Mark Meadows is conspiracy. And that still stands. He's going to trial. I know he doesn't like it, but whether it's the Attorney General in Arizona, Chris Mays prosecuting him, along with Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, or Mike Roman, the same group being prosecuted in Georgia, along with Jeff Clark, you're going to, I don't know about jail, but you're going to trial. Now, Donald Trump's not. I don't want to blow smoke or sunshine here. Georgia case is over for him. If it wasn't over before, it's certainly over now. The federal prosecutions are over for him. I just did a hot take about whether the sentencing in New York for stuff he did before he was even president is over because of the election on Tuesday. See, we talked about the ramifications of what would happen, the consequences. I know our audience listened to us, but a lot of America was like, really? That's going to happen? Yeah, that's going to happen. Okay? You know, there's an old song that I like that is apropos here, which is, how do you like me now? All right? That's Donald Trump walking around already doing illegal things going into the White House. So Mark Meadows, you're not going to be able to use the federal removal statute. And more importantly, there's now binding precedent on the books nationwide. Because the 11th Circuit in Georgia is the only circuit court to have ruled on this in 200 years. And the binding precedent, until there's a conflict with another law somewhere else at a circuit level, at the equal circuit level, is that a former federal officer is not entitled to drag their state prosecution to federal court. So Stephen Miller, when you're one day a former federal officer in about 4 years and 71 days, Susie Wiles in the White House, in Mark Meadows' positions, look out. Because if you commit crimes that a next prosecutor goes after, you're not going to have the federal courts to protect you as former federal officers. And that's got to be the case because, as I said at the top of this hot take, Mark Meadows couldn't even find 4 MAGA. He's got 6 alt-right MAGA on the court. Alito, right? Gorsuch, Thomas, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Roberts. They only needed to count to 4 to take the appeal up. I mean, you need 5 to win, but 4 to take it up. They couldn't even find 4 to side with Mark Meadows. You're going down, Mark Meadows. And we'll follow you, Legal AF, the YouTube channel. This is the kind of content and analysis you're going to find here. If you like it, not just a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, right? We are building this not for us. It's for you. It really is. The larger we are, the bigger the algorithmic gods interpret it and say, yeah, that's a good channel. Let's keep it going and keep the lights on. You have control over your independent media, your independent reporting and analysis like no other. Right? 50 million people a month know what you now know. Legal AF is the home of law and politics analysis and commentary like no other. And I welcome you to our next hot take. I'm Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.